Well, the understanding is Marco had drained the brakes.
That green engine 19, I believe Steve is going to give a little bit of a presentation for you guys.
Okay, I'm over here on the green engine now. So we understand that try to avoid you standing. You can stand here. If you're on the outside, I would suggest avoiding it because of the step down over there, so we won't lose anybody. But if you're in the middle and you're secure and you don't mind people behind you and around you, at your own risk, just don't fall out and I'll probably hear about this. Okay, for those who have quick eyes, you may have seen this as we went by. Anybody recognize who this is? Right, Dick Van Dyke. So this is Dick Van Dyke on this engine out of this window in preparation for the 1978 season, making a commercial for King's Dominion, whose engines were totally different colors. But it was all new at that time, so no one ever necessarily knew that. If you do the Taft Broadcasting commercials between Fairwinds, King's Dominion, King's Island, if they had similar eyes, you tended to see, you looked at the background of the commercial and said, well, that one was at King's Dominion. So anyway, what I usually say at this point, and I don't know that the Wi-Fi is turned on in the picnic grove for you to pick this up. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But if you went to YouTube and put in King's Dominion, commercial number 2, hashtag 2, 1978, you see Dick Van Dyke coming in on the 30-second commercial on this engine right here. I don't know, do you want to watch it? I hand this to Kyle and Kyle can walk back. Okay, let me try again because I'm fighting Mr. Timbers. We didn't used to have to fight that, but that's I guess a good thing. Can you hear me in the 5th car, sort of? Okay. Let me, well maybe, Chris, are you up there? Let me try. Chris, can you hear me? Can you see if we can hook together a couple of those extension cords such that I can hook into the train from here? We've got enough extensions. Well, let me try to. They said we've never done this before, so this is live. I had this version. I've got a 3-page plan, and 2 if it was raining. But obviously we're needing to go to version 2.2. We're 2.1 right now. So we're going to see if I can hook back in from here to the train PA system, and we'll see if we don't get feedback there. Let me do this. Well, I can try to turn it this way to get the back. Can you still hear me in the front? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Yep, I'm going to get feedback. Okay. So Dick Van Dyke, 1978, I welcome you to that. The person that was sitting in the engineer's seat in that commercial is Lou Brown, as you see the name on the side. This was originally Simon Kenton, as in local historian naming, and the blue engine was Tecumseh, that you are behind. It is now Kenny Van Meter. And you're probably thinking, who are those people? Lou Brown. For those in the back, you can see a poster hanging on, leaning against the door back there, so at least you got something you can see back there. It's a little closer. Lou Brown was a career steam engineer in charge of the heat, baking energy for a bakery, a big bakery, and had a fondness for steam, owned a steam fire truck that he competed against big diesel fire trucks that which normally, if he was given enough time to warm up the boiler, he could beat modern pumpers with a steam-driven system. More startup torque, and you got to get an internal engine up high RPM, but a steam locomotive, steam engine has the highest torque at the low end, so it's a different curve. Instead of going up, it starts up real high. That's why we can start 80-ton train with those 2 pistons. Well, 2 will be working one side of each, sort of 2. You see two pistons up there on our engine here. You can see the one on this side, one on that side. But every movement is being pushed by steam because it's a dual action. Steam pushes one direction, then pushes back to the other direction. So although it looks like 2 cylinders, it acts like 8 compared to a car where you've got to get the compression and the exhaust and all the other on a 4-cycle engine. So we get a lot of power at low speed. This engine is rated at about 60 miles per hour, but certainly not on this track. Anyway, so the story, Lou Brown was the first full-timer, foreman, superintendent, whatever you like to call him. Kenny Van Meter was his number 2, who was a local farmer up in Lebanon who ran steam equipment. So, fast forward to okay, well the story starts with Coney Island, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see that in the Coasterstock trip with the Mr. Dennis Spiegel. So you may recall Coney Island had a 24-inch gauge train, much like the gauge at the Cincinnati Zoo or lots of other zoos, with a C.P. Huntington type engine, one with a big single drive wheel in the middle. And in the 70s, when there was a big push to make Kings Island, the Walks and the others, the old school that were running Coney Island all those years, they sort of split out a little bit, and the younger managers moved up and started taking control and building Kings Island in the 70, 71, 72 time frame. And they sent them up here. They had their hands full building that part. They got Lou Brown, Kenny Van Meter, and a few other folks who had done career steam to take over getting the train. They said, I'll tell you what, let's go to get a Crown Metal Products. If you look in the front of the train, so Crown Metal Products, yeah, it's right here. Sorry, like I said, this is live. So it was Crown Metal Products, and it was where they went to. And the catalog at that time, this is a picture of the a picture of this. The current picture is actually of the engines that were at Coney Island, and the smaller ones. So they said, well, we'll get something a little bigger than that. And they showed them a catalog from Crown. And this catalog, they called them the Little Toot, was 15 through 24. What they called small 36s were out, but they look smaller on it. So this is called the big 36. So then, Kyle's going to come along with the pictures to show you those. So they said, we'll take care of it, we're ordering. But they knew the big 36s were available. So while management was thinking, okay, something a little bigger than Coney Island, as I understand it, when the flatbeds showed up from Waino, Pennsylvania, with these things on them, you can imagine the surprise that happened, and many people were like, whoa, this is a big train. This isn't. So we advertised this as 2/3 scale, but it's 2/3 scale of the General from the Civil War, which started as a 50-inch, and then they trimmed it back to 4 foot 8.5 to be standard with the gauges the Southern Railroads had a okay. Well, I don't know, maybe if they ask questions we can repeat back there or something. Oh! Well, we'll do the best we can. Hopefully, I'll repeat if we have the timbers go by and rattle things too much. So they caught them by surprise, and we're glad they did, because we got the big trains, and compared to other Crown engines, we have more brass than a lot of them. It's a little fancier than many of them. Some quick observations. See the green one, every time Crown would deliver 2 trains to a park, the engines would be different. Obviously numbers. 19, I'm not sure what Lou's preference was for 19, but number 12 is actually the 12th Crown large, or the 12th Crown 36-inch gauge that was built. So that was something actually I just learned last night. I'm still learning. So as I was saying before, I had 7 years as a conductor. So I'm up to 26 now in the park on the train, and that is not the longest. For those who can see across the way, there's a little sign that says Sam Jasper, MD. I believe he was at 43 years on the train. So there's a lot of, everyone on the train this year is a returner. We don't have a new person on the engineer staff. Okay. Well, let me do this. I'm going to switch back to the front so people can hear me, and I will hand things off to be watched back. How's that sound?
Hey, when you were up front, we never heard a word of it back here. The whole time, we didn't hear a word. And these guys can vouch for me.
We heard you talking, but we couldn't understand anything.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry.
At least the engine won't be making noise now.
But we could hear her.
Oh.
So,
However she's using the speaker.
yeah, walk that way. He's not quite used to presentation.
So he just wants to drive over.
Yeah, right. Get me out of here.
I love that man.
That'd be funny if we all might be.
It might be. I'm on the train now. Jerry, hit the walk through earlier.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm not sure this is a Verizon or Washington.
It's slow.
I'll try. Okay, so those were the first 2 engineers, and that's why they're named as such. The crew of 12, the original 12, between them had 400 years of steam and railroading experience. That's a lot. There were 12 of them, and mathematicians amongst you, trying to do an average. 2 of them were in college. So the rest was amongst the 10. We had railroaders. We had a 50-year retiree from Pennsylvania Railroad. He and another buddy took care of the track, because it was a dandy dancer, as they call him, on the Pennsylvania. And we had a steamboat captain who one time brought in, while I was here, brought in his riverboat whistle. So if you can imagine being in the station and all of a sudden hearing a riverboat steam whistle coming around the corner, like we did this morning, that would get your attention. So anyway, the Lou Brown entrance, when he made commercials, that's what he would stage down in the station. You can picture a big camera crew. Back then they had the giant cameras sitting there on the concrete in the corner there, and he would come around and do that big steam thing. It works best when it's a light drizzle, humid day, because the steam is highly visible. So if you happen to catch it a humid day with a little sun coming in from the east, you may have seen a picture of the blue engine coming into the station all full of glory of steam. That was that kind of a day. So, but today actually Mark did a great job. I give my hand to Mark and Dean up front for being able to do the steam they did. Okay, Mark, that's where you go get that down now. Thank you. We appreciate that. So the crew, Sam Jasper that I mentioned, he was here from the opening day. He was actually a math professor. Anybody here go to Ohio University in math? I used to get math. He was a math professor there. He trained mines in the winter and he minded trains in the summer, was his phrase. He was actually a PhD, so if you saw a sign back there that says Sam Jasper, MD, was actually doctorate of math. But in the old days, MD sort of fit better. So we had a bunch of guys who had all sorts of experience. As you probably recognize, of the original Taft parks, 3 ahead steam trains. This is the only park left with the steam trains. There's a lot of smart railroading knowledge of the other parks as well, but it came together here at this park to modify them enough that they survived here. I say that because the original configuration, the way the trains came on a summer day, it could only go for about 6 hours. The fire, if anybody's been up in the engine, and when we get back to the station, we invite you to come up into the engine, which is also one of the rare things we do at Kings Island versus other parks, is let you come up in the engine as long as there's an engineer or fireman there. Between the engineer and fireman was a big contributing burner torch that blew into the firebox from between the engineer and fireman. Sounded like a jet engine. That was here when I started here. And it blasted the flue sheets. And it was very inefficient, heat-wise, temperature-wise. So we now put internal boilers, burners into the firebox down there. So it's kind of like if you take a home grill times 5 or 10, depending upon the home grill. That's what you would see if it was turned off and you looked in there. There's all these little tiny flicker flames, 2 to 5 inches tall. But the whole thing is this base of flames down there. It's much more efficient. Another one of the crew members by the name of Bob Maynard, and actually it was Bob and Sam who got me interested in engineering. So they're sort of my mentors in a way. He was a live steamer that I mentioned before, and he helped organize a group in Cincinnati called the Cinder Sniffers, which is actually in Indiana's, I believe, where they have a lot of track. Imagine multiple gauges all inside of one another. And he helped establish that. He was a mechanical engineer, but he worked out at home and had a shop in his basement. And he built live steam trains and modified them, and he built the crosshead pump. So this is one of the rare Crown engines, not aware of any others, that has a crosshead pump on it. So in addition to the injector that you have to run, as long as the engine is moving, it is putting some water in the boiler at all times. So that helps make it easier on the old guys who are driving it and firing it, and safer as well, because we've got that in addition to the 2 injectors, which is a bit of magic from 1900s. Speaking of 1900s, so I mentioned the Jello. These are on the 1850s, 1860s time frame. That is referred to as an American 440. That means there's 4 pilot wheels in front, 4 drive wheels, and there's no supporting wheels underneath the cab where the engineer sits. That's a 440. And it's called American because compared to British, it's got a suspension system where the drive wheels sort of float and one reacts to the other. So as one hits some irregularities in the tracks, which apparently were really bad in America in the early days because our tracks tended to be on trees that were cut down, whereas the British had them on rock and it was level. So as the front wheel would go through the irregularity, the back would adjust because they were pivoting off one another and not hard fixed to the suspension like a regular car or a British one would be. So that's American. But these are propane. The early Crowns tended to be coal or oil, Around 1970s, you probably may recall the Clean Air Act. That was big then. That's when the big crowns started having the options for propane. So we have 2 propane. So we say we shovel propane here. Cinders are a lot easier in your eyes back here compared to a coal cinder. The problem with that is, how many people here have successfully used a home grill when it's about 20 degrees outside? You've got pretty low propane vapor pressure, don't you? Yeah, once you get around 50 degrees or lower, the liquid propane in the tank does not want to turn into a vapor to give you vapor pressure, which is what we need for the fire. So there's a small fortune that Bob Maynard and company put in copper tubing around the propane tanks in the back and tapped into some steam off the boiler. If you look where Kyle is standing right now on the side, right underneath his feet, I think that's Kyle. Is that Kyle? Yep, I don't know. So right underneath it, there's a hose that loops underneath that step. That's taking steam back to that fortune and copper that was back there going around the propane tanks. So I had this vision when I was 16, 18, 20, and 50, 60 degrees outside. I walk up here to the engine, and there'd be about an inch of ice around the propane tanks. For anybody who's ever used like a compressed air can to clean off dust from a computer or something, you know how the can gets cold? Well, if you can imagine how much propane we are vaporizing off of the liquid and running through that, because we go through about half of those 6 100-gallon tanks a day. So if you can imagine vaporizing that much propane, that BTU's got to come to some place to convert it to vapor, and that ends up putting ice on it. So that's helping us keep that running. He added a feed water, like I mentioned, a pump, but also a heater on it, so that when we're putting water into the boiler, it's not room temperature, and this makes it room test 20 degrees. It's heated up by waste steam, so we're always spinning water off the top. Using that steam water. What I'm going to do, if Kyle is good and Mark is back there, I'm going to jump in. Okay, this is going to be real fast. My pocket watch stopped. A lot of people ask, blow the horn. I say we have a steam whistle. So if Kyle, you can demonstrate us. What I'm going to ask him to do is, because of the time, is give us about 20 seconds of a whistle. So if you want to videotape the plume of steam, give you 15-20 seconds of steam, he'll go ahead and pull the whistle. And if Mark's ready in the engine house. That's a steam whistle. Now don't confuse that with a horn. This is a horn. Mark, there. Now I had to last time he did that, he made it sound just like a fire truck. And an engineer was going by and he went panicking, and we had to let the communications know we were going to do this, because someone in the park's going to say, where's the fire truck from? Mason's here. So that's a quick, now, the green whistle, can you hear that? Max, you up there? Can you give us a blue whistle? Thank you. You picked up on a difference in sound this year, I trust. For those of you near a yellow pedestal that's scattered along the train, I have 4 of them. 3 of them, you see a plate, a round plate. That's a baffle that goes in. You take the top off the whistle, you put it in there, and it changes the sound. So my challenge to everybody, Chris, do we have the fire started? Super. So I challenge everybody, sorry, multitasking, is when you're in the park, listen to the whistles. You know which one sounds like what now. To me, the green one sounds a little bit more like a riverboat compared to blue. Blue's a little more throaty, and it was awesome on haunt. You can imagine you could play that just right to get the real throaty sort of perfect haunt sound. And then listen for the signal, the the banter is a 2 or 3, 2, 1, 2 on short line to figure out where they are. So that's my challenge. What we're going to jump to the time if Kyle, you want to make sure that the switch is good.
Friday 91, Saturday 95.
So we're Eric's up front relighting the fire. Maintenance do that. We've shut down both engines so you can hear it as loud as it has been, and I apologize for the sound. I said this is new, and also I've never tried to do this on the turning with the background things. So we've had the engine, the burner, and the compressor turned off. And let me see if I think we have enough that we'll be able to have the compressor going. So once I hear the compressor going, yes, so I'm within probably 60 seconds of us being able to move.
If everyone just if you're standing, just go ahead and sit down for me, or get ready to move. Don't want you to tip over a little bit. Everyone, can we just give a big round of applause to Steve, because he's doing such a great job up here. Yeah. I mean, he's got more, but I just want to do that.
Okay, so the King's Dominion, I saw some hands there. So we had 2 engines, 2 trains at King's Dominion. Number 601 and 552. Well, obviously they're not there anymore. 552 has gone to Dry Gulch, Oklahoma. It was the next stop that I have in my record, so I try to keep track of where these things go to. And we've had KD people come here in the past and said, I used to work on the train, I always wondered where it went to. So that made their day to find out where their old park engine went to. Anyone here been to Busch Gardens, Tampa? Okay, you saw engine 601? That's King's Dominion. That's the one Tampa Broadcasting built for King's Dominion. So that's quick status in those 2. Last year, when I opened it up for questions and answers, the very first question someone asked about Winterfest. Is that person happened to be here today that asked me the very first question last year? I see a hand wave in the back. Awesome. Well, the question was, for those who didn't come to Winterfest the winter before, what are you doing to make the train engines better able to handle the cold that they had? We had a bitter Winterfest 2 winters ago, and we were taking like 30 minutes to recover the steam, because it's a heat engine. Someone uses a heat engine. Well, that was on my list of things to do to help figure out, but that really brought it to the front and center. So I've given you some of the Kings Island story in the past. Here's new for this year. As we've been moving forward, I haven't talked about, for the last several years, there's a core of us, maintenance included, old-timers, including one Navy officer, graduate of Annapolis, who knows steam, another an FRA engineer who's on our crew. That's got an FRA steam license, is run with Whitewater Valley Road in Indiana for 30 plus years, and maintenance, and some others. We were going to other parks because some of us are involved in ASTM. For anybody who's heard of ASTM, they help put together standards for music parks. So we've been going to Cedar Point, Tweetsy, Dollywood, Strasburg. Keynote on Strasburg. Strasburg is like the oldest public railroad in America, 1800 something, in Strasburg, Pennsylvania. They run commercial steam in the wintertime. So we connected with them through the ASTM and spent the day there for like 7 in the morning. Our usual routine, we show up at 7 in the morning with 2 boxes of donuts and spend the day in the engine house, in the engine, helping them, to the extent they'll let us do stuff. Cedar Point one was actually shoveling some coal. Learning, came back with 7 pages of recommendations to change and tweak and things to do to the engine. So hopefully this past winter, we had a much faster response time, steam up time. For those who have looked over as we go by the engine and as we if you come up to our engine, you're going to see there's a lot more things that are insulated up in the engine, tubing, piping. Some tubing that was long and didn't need to be is shorter, so it can keep the heat before we get to like the hydrostatic lubricator. A number of things like that. We good to go? We have a high ball from the back. So we're building up steam, that's what the chugging is. On a steam locomotive, there's two sources of chugging. The steam, when you're used in the piston, and it's exhausted through piping up the stack, and the air compressor is a small steam engine unto itself, where the shaft, instead of attached to the side rods, attached to an air compressor. So the exhaust coming out of the steam air compressor is also going up the stack and creating the chugging sound. So we have two inputs to chugging. Okay, we got a high ball, so we're gonna press on here. So you can say goodbye to the fireman's side and Dick Van Dyke, of the picture still up there as we go by. So we've insulated the mechanical lubricator, which is on the other side. Quick story there. 1800s, the running boards on these steam engines. In the front was a door where we have a window, so if you've been at the Cedar Point one, you know that's a door in front. You would have to go out that door and on the running board, and you're leaning over the side, lubricating while you're moving, because you didn't have time to stop and didn't want to risk getting attacked by whoever's out there. A variety of people, it's hard to go stereotypes and say an Indian. So they had to keep rolling, and that was really rough. So there was a big push to build a mechanical lubricator that would do it for you. People tried, and Alonzo McCoy was the one who came up with the best. He was a roundhouse engineer. He came up with by far the best. Other people wanted it. They didn't want the knockoffs, the cheap ones. They asked for, and this according to the B&O Museum and lots of others, this is where it came from, they would ask for the real McCoy. So Elijah McCoy, mechanical lubricators, is supposedly the genesis of the phrase the real McCoy. There's a lot of train phrases. Blowing your stack, the steam goes out the top, yank your chain. We didn't have brakes, so you put a chain around the drive wheel. If you wanted to go irritate an engineer, you go yank his chain and the train may slide away. So as we come along here, off to the left, there's another cabin. This is the path where we would stage the robbery of the train, and that was the year for that. So there was an ammo box, a big ammo box staged on the rear, and they would come up and say, where's the money and all that? And they'd see it, and they'd run off, and so light shows. But we're positioning ourselves here. So I have a question. So anybody here ever wondered as we go by the engine house or the car barn, what's in the shed? Would anybody like to see the shed? Put your hand up. Guess what? Special for you, we're going to go see the shed. And the engine house. So, this is a version of the nighttime operation. We will be backing it up. Blows the 3 whistles. At the end of the day, it's the loudest 3 whistles of the day. You can hear it for miles. And we back up into the engine house. We're not going to be there long. We're just going to go back. See it. We may do a Flight of Fear imitation. So, as you imagine going forwards, keep your hands and arms and legs and appendices and anything you want to keep inside. We will have very tight clearances. This is not a ride where you have this envelope that is design standards. So we will not be having your envelope. So keep everything, don't even lean out there because it will be within inches.
Just want to clarify. Any legs hanging out, they're going to have to be inside. Heads have to be inside. Arms have to be inside. Like he said, it's going to be a very tight clearance, and we don't want you guys to get hit by any of the walls. So please make sure you stay tightly towards the center of the train. Thank you.
I would add, if you have any bushes along there, don't reach out because you'd be bushwhacked. Okay, so we are going to the eastern spot, which at the moment is where the blue engine red train. We have gone through 2 switches backwards. At least the back of the train has gone through 2. This is the engine house where in the mornings we get the trains ready. You saw some tools I put out in front just for props. We have lots of oil. There's 90-some Zerk grease fittings in the morning. Put sand in the dome, which is usually the middle dome or the front dome for the blue engine. We need that sometimes for traction. We will, because we're on this side, we'll be going by 4 electric screw jacks, very close, that in the wintertime, we have these big beams that are on the other side of the house, you can see over on the left side. They go into that, and we actually pull the engine up into the air. I'm going to go with 4 feet or so. You can take the top of the stack off to get it up closer to the ceiling, so that we're under there, and the maintenance guys will take all the running gear out. For those who came back, when we come back out in green, you see as you come out something about the size of a toaster on this side. That's the mechanical lubricator that references the real McCoy. So we've got the yellow things with the red tops, or the jacks that will pick up the train. In the winter time, we do one train, pretty massive tear down every winter. On the left side underneath the ladders are the 2 beams that go in there. Take wheels off, reprofile the tires. Yes, these are steel belted radials on the drive wheels.
Once again, just another little safety spiel. Make sure you're keeping your arms inside. Make sure you keep your butts on the seats because the train does jerk a little bit. Don't want you falling over onto other people. Thank you.
Okay, so everyone see the inside? Okay. Now you see it? Okay, that's our version of a flight of fear. Lights on, lights off tour. Okay. One. Good. Okay, once we're gonna build steam back up. You can turn the lights back on in case someone wants to take more photos. So in the wintertime, the painters may come through. Both of these trains have been pretty repainted in the last 2 to 3 years. You'll notice at the end of the armrest, one of those is Simon, the other is Kenton. That was standard procedure. The sort of rectangle squares thing, the arm, those are interchangeable. So as the train the Crown sent it out to a park, they would change those out and make a new design. This design is called the Disney style. Bert Williams was the primary designer builder. His wife was the stylist designer for the cars, as I understand. So we have what's referred to as the Disney style cars. Some of the Crowns have closed sides and a walkway down the middle. So if you can see Old Hickory, sort of near New Orleans area, that's a different style. The air compressors, lots of big tools. It does leak in the winter, so it's not the warmest place when the boiler's off. So going along, you can see Kyle, he can point to the mechanical lubricator there. And Eric, that's good. We can move the reverser back and forth. Let him see the motion in the reverser by moving it back and forth. We'll give it a little. So in the morning we got a long checklist of things to do. Engines has a checklist. I'm saying that's we as an operation. The conductors have a long checklist they have to do and test run every day. There we go. A little live speed there. He made me trying to actually move it backwards. And then we see we had a a block there on the rail, so if he was to come out too far, he would have stopped before he came out. To the extent I can hear you, anybody have a question or answer more in the station? Yes. No, there's lots of parts of the original Taft broadcasting. Of the original 3 Taft broadcasting bars, Kings Island, Kings Dominion, Carolyn, that's the only one left. Carolyn's, for those who were waiting for the, sorry, I'm not doing a big story at this time. One of the steam, our sister engines, is the engine that was at Neverland Ranch. You know who I'm talking about, you recognize that. That was his. That was from Carolyn's. So, we talked real fast with myself, some on the what do engineers not like about running the train at the end of the season? How are they different and changing? Weather conditions? Well, we sort of talked about Winterfest. You got to keep everything warm or else the steam condenses before it gets to the propulsion. Do we inspect the track and walk it daily? What do you do if a train breaks down, if it ever breaks down? If you look at the front of the cow catcher, there's a link there. Classic pin and link. That's in the style of Cedar Point uses on your railroad. You bring up another engine in front of it, you pull the pin out of the coupler, you bring the link up, you drop the pin in that, so one engine can pull the other. Happens every so often, when you lose pressure or something, you just it's our tow truck, so to speak.
As the train does come to a stop, we just ask that you please remain seated until I let you know that it's safe to exit. It does still do a little bit jerking. Even if it feels like it's stopped, it might not be, so just remain seated. There's a lot of use of remain seated to do. Alright. See one more.
Real fast in the 70s live shows, one of the actors would say, please stay in your seat until the park stops moving. Rotating the park underneath you. If you've been listening to Dennis Spiegel, you know, he recognized he was well ahead of his time on the virtual reality ride, but he was saying he was rotating the park underneath us the whole time. Anyway, we welcome you up to the engine, and now or any time during the day, ask questions, take photographs.
Thank you guys for being on here. I certainly enjoyed it.